As someone who has actively supported a lot of what Zack Snyder has accomplished as a director throughout his career, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't hold his latest film to the same standards that I hold every other film to. I've said for years that as much as I love when Zack Snyder adapts something, and he has a solid foundation that he can then build upon, on more than one occasion I've found his more original films to be downright underwhelming. Movies like Sucker Punch and Army of the Dead just never really did anything for me. But I was hoping that Rebel Moon, which started as a rejected Star Wars concept, would be the exception to that rule. Well, after much anticipation and after watching the film for myself last night, I'm being brutally honest when I say that not much about Rebel Moon worked for me either. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
When a colony on the edge of the galaxy finds itself threatened by the armies of a tyrannical ruler, they dispatch a young woman with a mysterious past to seek out warriors from the neighboring planets to help them take a stand. Zack Snyder has always been highly regarded as a visual director. In fact, that is something that film discussion around his projects typically focuses on, and rightfully so. To me, whether it's done practically or using visual effects, the guy knows how to stage a shot. He knows how to make scenes look like living, breathing works of art. I know a lot of people take issue with some of the things that he typically does visually, like the use of slow motion and those typical Zack Snyder filters. But those things never bothered me because that was his style. That's what made his movies more distinctive. More than all the visual stuff though, I don't think Zack Snyder gets enough credit for how he explores deep emotional themes in his films typically, even to the point that sometimes it goes over people's heads. To me, he was always able to make me care about characters that I normally wouldn't in a lesser movie. Now that could have something to do with whoever's writing the script for him at any given time, but either way, I always felt like Zack Snyder relayed those themes and messages well in his films like Man of Steel and Watchmen. The other thing that I don't think Zack gets enough credit for is how he's not afraid to take chances with his projects. And in my mind, they've mostly paid off. He's not afraid to make something his own and to approach a concept in a more unconventional way, which in my opinion is what a great filmmaker is supposed to do.
Goddamn right, that's the only way I work, Cap.
So if I take all of this into consideration, these are the reasons why I found Rebel Moon to be so perplexing. Because to me, he didn't do a lot of the things that I think is appealing about his previous works. Rebel Moon, of course, started as a Star Wars film that Zack pitched to Disney and was ultimately turned down. So he kind of reworked it into a somewhat original concept, and let me just say, you can definitely tell. A lot of what's going on in Rebel Moon feels very familiar, very safe, especially from a story perspective. We have the oppressed farm people who's rising up against the evil empire who rules over them with an iron fist. We have a chosen one character with a mysterious past who is leading the charge against them. We have the concept of assembling a team of warriors who form this ragtag group of individuals who are supposed to take this fight to the greater threat. I feel like I've seen most of what's going on in Rebel Moon 1,000 times in other sci-fi movies before.
Not impressed.
Don't get me wrong, Zack Snyder does all of this in the most Zack Snyder way possible. But I just expected more in the way of originality when it came to the overall concept of this film. I mean, sure, there's some creative creature designs and a decent amount of world building that was passable. And the movie definitely feels grand and epic in scale from a visual perspective. But it all only felt very surface deep to me. And I just expect a little bit more from Zack Snyder.
Put some effort into it!
Now I know there's a longer cut of this film that exists that Zack himself has said is a much better film. Which makes this all the more frustrating because I have to ask the question, why not just lead with that version of the film then? You are releasing this on a streaming service where people spend hours upon hours binge watching whatever garbage Netflix decides to produce. And you're gonna sit here and tell me that they wouldn't let him release a 4 or 5 hour cut of this movie right off the bat? Why exactly? You don't have the restriction of a shorter runtime that is typically used to appease the theatrical release. I think the whole rollout of this film just left something to be desired. I thought that Zack Snyder went to Netflix and started creating content there to get away from this type of thing. I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't even know if a longer cut of the film is necessarily going to help.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Yes, I will agree that chunks of this story are very clearly missing, especially in the middle of the film, which is unfortunate, and we all know that the director's cuts for Batman vs. Superman and Justice League were infinitely better than the theatrical cuts, but he released those cuts in spite of studio meddling, so why are we having to deal with that again here as it pertains to Netflix? Why are we holding back at all? Especially if they are actually committed to Zack's vision and bringing this entire universe to life. I don't understand why you're announcing that you're releasing an inferior version of the film. It doesn't seem like the best marketing strategy.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Plus, is a director's cut going to help the fact that most of the characters in Rebel Moon felt very one-dimensional and cliche? I guess only time will tell. I'm willing to give it a shot because Zack does have a great track record with extended cuts, but I have to be honest, the bare bones version of Rebel Moon didn't exactly leave me wanting more. Of course, there are cool and interesting visuals in Rebel Moon. At this point, Zack Snyder could do that with his eyes closed. That doesn't make me care about what's going on. The story, the plot, the characters are supposed to do that. Even most of the action sequences felt very underwhelming to me. I always think back to that scene in the Snyder Cut where the Amazons are trying to keep the mother box away from Steppenwolf. That's a great action sequence and something that I've talked about long after watching that movie. Meanwhile, I can't think of one single action sequence in Rebel Moon that actually stuck out to me, which again I'd have to say is most unusual for a Zack Snyder film.
How can you not care?
Like this.
I know a lot of people who love Zack Snyder are going to enjoy this film, and I'm happy for those people. I wish I did. And the people who never liked him probably shouldn't even bother because I doubt Rebel Moon is going to be the movie that changes your mind. But again, as someone who has defended him and his past works extensively, his last 2 films now just have not hit the same way for me. In a lot of ways, Rebel Moon feels like a massive missed opportunity. Star Wars is officially dead. Now, I'm not saying that anything is ever going to be able to fill those very large shoes, but a lot of people expected, at the very least, for Rebel Moon to give us a little bit of what we've been missing with modern Star Wars. And to me, it very much tried to do that, but it also failed in a lot of aspects. I mean, this movie is intended to kick off an entire universe, an entire new franchise, but it doesn't feel like anyone is really putting their best foot forward, and that may have a lot to do with Netflix itself. I'm not really sure.
That is why you fail.
One thing that I never thought I would say about a Zack Snyder film is that it felt generic, but that's where I find myself a day after watching it. Overall, Rebel Moon just did not give me what I expect from a director like this. It feels like a hollow, empty vessel on cruise control, navigating its way through the mediocrity of the Netflix galaxy. Something just felt off about this movie. Everything from the characters to the story just felt so uninspired to me. I actually got bored while watching Rebel Moon, which I don't think even happened with Army of the Dead. It's very rare that I feel almost nothing throughout the course of watching a Zack Snyder film. It's even more rare that I feel mostly frustrated when it's over. This might actually be one of the biggest disappointments of the year for me, and that's because I hold Zack Snyder at a much higher standard than maybe some people do. And to me, this time, he simply just did not meet that standard. And unfortunately, that's why I'm going to have to give Rebel Moon the Careless Sam Gerard.
I don't care! Y'all be cool. Shut up.